Hello and welcome to Pro Wrestling 101 with PJ Polacco, aka Just Incredible. I am
Freshly
your
shaved.
yes, I am your co-host JP John Poz from the Two Man Power Trip of Wrestling, and of course, joining me is the former ECW World Heavyweight Champion, World Tag Team Champion, and
Yes.
multiple-time WWF Hardcore Champion. Of course, PJ Polacco, Just Incredible. Welcome to the show, sir.
Great to be here. This is episode 3. So, really excited. A lot of cool stuff going on in the business. But I guess you have a nice topic for us and the fans, everybody listening in. What did you have for us? Registering versus selling, correct?
Yes, yes. Do want to do a little pro wrestling
Cool.
101, of course, and that's always something that was intrigued me because everyone always uses the term selling. He's a good seller. He's a good seller. No one really
Right.
says register, except for really guys in the business. But nobody, you don't hear fans going, "Oh, he didn't register that well. He didn't register." So, would
Sure.
love to kind of just dissect registering versus selling, the difference, and kind of what leads to the other one. I mean, register, then sell, sell, and register. I mean, how does that whole
Yeah.
thing work as far as the psychology and everything behind it?
Well, registering is when you take, like, for example, a really smaller offense, right? Some people tend to really oversell. And what I mean by selling, for those that don't know, is when you're literally trying to portray that you're being, that you're in a hold, for example, if you're in a sleeper hold, or if you're being choked out, or an arm bar, something along those lines, or a big punch, a big clothesline. And registering is when somebody's giving you maybe a couple of gut shots or smaller offense. And it's a big difference because I think selling, or the way I was always taught it, selling was more of an over the top, really trying to portray to the audience the offense that the guy is giving you. Like if he gives you a big maneuver, like even a big clothesline, that's hence a sell. And like even something like an Austin where he would do a flurry of those small punches, those are more registering of the offense than a big Rock would do it too. Like he'd punch, 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 and then he'd spit on the hand and give you the big one. That's the registering versus the sell. So it's very, it's really a nuance. It's getting into nuances of the game of pro wrestling, but I think it's important to touch upon, because there's certain times where you need to sell, and there's certain times, and that's again going back to pacing of a match, where you need to kind of at times register something, not give it the time to sell. And also, again, I said this on the last episode, you have to think how, if this was a fight, if this was, and somehow if it was capable and possible of being real, how would I go about it? So sometimes you have to pull it back and register, and other times it deserves, in the moment of the match, a sell, a big sell. So that's kind of the thing.
So let's just say Tommy Dreamer, he's about to do the flip flop and fly to you. He's going to punch.
Right.
He's going to do it. So how, like you're in the midst of it, you're going to be, you're just credible.
Yep.
Obviously, feuding with Dreamer. So what are you like? What are you doing? What's going through your mind? How are you registering those punches at first?
Right, the punches are complete registers, right? Because you know what's coming next. You know that the crescendo to that series is the big elbow. So of course you're going to just pop your head back. That's considered registering, right? And then you know that the big one he's coming with it is going to be a bump and then a sell. So that's kind of where we're what we're touching upon.
So when you're going through this, and let's just say training school wise or something, what do they
Yeah.
teach you when you're actually kind of like learning the business? What are they saying? Just act like it's real. Act, like how would you react when you get into a real fight? I mean, how do they kind of
Yeah,
explain it to you?
it's funny because I always felt that was the easiest way to explain it to a layperson, to somebody who's not necessarily familiar with our business, or for someone that's newly introduced or doesn't necessarily know the ins and outs. But so, a lot of times they get it very wrong, where they just tell these young kids to just sell it, sell it, sell it. It's all you hear, and it's a very bastardized term. That's all you hear. Oh, sell it, sell it. But that really, I mean, there's so many layers to it, and people don't. You really, and again, you touched on it, and I touched upon it too last week. you have to try to, okay, when you walk into that ring, it's like you're on a movie set. And actors, that's why actors and sometimes even, we saw, I don't know when this is going to air, but it'll certainly air after NXT 30. Pat McAfee had a hell of a, first match against Adam Cole. Of course, Adam Cole led that, but again, going into somebody that's inexperienced, he did a good job, but he was overselling everything. He was making everything, very, oh my God, like he's going to die. And instead of little subtle hints and movements, which again would be like a registering, everything was almost not comical, but over the top. You don't want to make it over the top. You really want to make it like you want to walk into that ring thinking, okay, this is the playground. These are the rules to the play we're gonna put on.
Right.
And what am I going to allow myself to give and to take? And again, that's to understand. Okay, if I'm wrestling a Spike Dudley, or if I'm a bigger guy wrestling a Spike Dudley, for those who don't know, was 5'7", 5'8", 150 pounds soaking wet, but he was a great pro wrestler. And when someone, you got to take in account size and status on the card, because that's all important, that's all relevant, and how you're going to, if they hit you, how are you going to, hence the word sell. Sell is a term that comes from way back when. It's like it's a carny kind of word from the old carnival days. Literally, you're selling something to the people. You're trying to put forth that you're hurt. That's where the word selling comes from. It's like, oh, I got punched in the jaw. You're selling it to the fans, and you're trying to portray it as real. And that's where it lies. And the registering would just be 50% of that. It would be kind of dialing back on, your whether it's your punches, the way you snap, the way you bump. If you bump, if you see it in a lot of big men versus little men, where a little guy will hit the ropes maybe once or twice with a clothesline, and the big guy will just stumble back. That's a register, right? And then what I did, I used to do this spot all the time with Kevin Nash when Kevin was just coming out as Diesel, and I was PJ Walker. I wasn't Aldo yet, where I would be in a bear hug. And I would fight out of the bear hug. Of course, he would be registering. And then I'd finally, from punches that he would register, just kind of, acknowledge that I'm hitting him. And then I would bite him in the head. He would release. He would release the hold. I'd hit the ropes, one clothesline. He'd kind of stumble back, wave his hands back, and his arms back and forth. Hit it again, one more time. Same thing. Finally, I'd step on his foot. He would sell the foot like, oh my God, he just stepped on my toes. So he's one-legged. Then I'd hit the ropes, big clothesline. Then you get the big sell. So that would really be the accurate way to describe kind of the, both sides of the spectrum. You know what I mean?
Yep. Makes perfect sense. Now, with Pat McAfee and Adam Cole, kind of a similar example, you think that it's because McAfee is so much bigger, even though he's not really a big guy, Cole is just so much smaller. Do you think
He's so much
that's
smaller,
kind
yeah.
of, he's just a really small guy, but it's just like, wow,
Yeah.
you think that kind of kills the match where McAfee, his inexperience kind of lends to it too. Like, you can't oversell for a smaller guy, right?
Right. It wasn't even the size that mattered, although it does, because Adam Cole is very, very undersized for what I see as a pro wrestler. Of course, he has all the talent in the world. I'm not knocking him in any way. But compared to Pat McAfee, who is 6'3", 6'4", over 240 pounds, 250 pounds. He's a professional football or former professional football player. Although he was a kicker, nonetheless, these guys are jacked. These guys are, they're prime specimens, And so right there, it's it's a little discrepancy. But and again, I'm not knocking Pat McAfee in any way, because I was really impressed with the work he put in and the risks he took, and almost. And I want to get into this later. I don't want to forget this point, but to get to this point, then I want to go to where I was thinking. He just was almost hokey in his ways of selling. Like he he was trying to do such a good job that he was overdoing it at times, where it did not look real at all. It looked like what you would a parody at times with
Mm-hmm.
some of his
Yep.
selling.
Yep.
Not that, again, he's very inexperienced. But like, when he was in the figure four, and I just watched it again this morning, he was shaking and instead of trying to get it, you know what I mean? Trying to get some kind of, if somebody had that on you and you're trying to fight out of it, again, where I try to put my mind is, how the hell am I getting out of this? If this is real and you're shooting with me and you grab that, you put that figure four on me, A, it really works. B, how would I really try to get out of it? I'm not going to be going, no, with both hands. I mean, I know Flair did it, but he did it for a second and then he started to maneuver to work out of it, or his opponents, because sometimes they would reverse it on him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think that's a really important point. And I already forgot the point I was trying to make. God damn it! I knew this was going to happen. This is when you get knocked out too many times. But anyways, with McAfee again, I think that with any kind of an experience, you always tend to go to that place where you overstate everything, and it's like acting. It's like some actors will play it over the top, like like they do the monologues, like the Christopher Walkens or even the Pacinos these days. They go on that monologue where, God damn it, and they start to
Yeah.
in acting. That's what
Yep.
the oversell is to me in wrestling. So it's a very fine line. And again, I just always try to play it as if this was real. And I know it's a very broad and it's a weird thing to say, but if it were real, how would you try to the best of your efforts to make this fantasy world look like reality? So
It's interesting to me, like you say, kind of overselling and stuff. And I'm just kind of thinking back to last week with Shawn Michaels and Raw. Not really the overselling part, but maybe the selling and
underselling.
registering.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost the opposite, which is
Yeah.
very un-Shawn Michaels like. It's when you think of him, you think of maybe he oversells sometimes, but he
Yeah.
really undersold it. So Ric Flair gets knocked out from the punt. Big Show, who is 3 times as bigger as both of them combined, gets
Right.
knocked out from the punt. This guy gets knocked. All these guys are getting taken out and knocked out for the punt. What do you think? He gives him the RKO, which is usually a knockout move. He kind of got
Right.
up from that kind of too quickly, and then he punted him. Maybe they were short on time or something where he kind of quickly maybe got up, but I don't know. But the punt, and then he kind of undersold and got up. What do you think about underselling?
I think that's horrible. I think underselling is the worst thing you can do because you're really discrediting the move. And I find that happens way too much in wrestling. I don't think there is enough selling because there are more people that have made money on being good sellers. Ricky Morton, of course, is one of them. Ricky Steamboat,
Mm-hmm.
another one, and many others. I mean, it's just saying. I was just watching, some old Memphis stuff. Even guys like Jerry Lawler were even though you don't think of Lawler as a good seller, when he was a babyface back in his territory and he was running things, he was a hell of a seller, man. But then the reason for that is, and this is again classic black and white wrestling. Just what I mean by that is basic rule of thumb is, you get somebody to sell because you want them to eventually get to their feet. And it's again, this is movies as well. You want the good guy to, at the end of the movie, they have that big showdown. The good guy's getting his ass kicked. He's fighting from behind. But if you don't give that good guy an ass kicking, you're not going to care about his big comeback, regardless of what kind of movie it is. If it's a fight scene, if it's a Star Wars lightsaber battle, or if it's even a gun battle, whatever it may be, you want the good guy, the baby face, to be in jeopardy. So when he finally does come back, people are rooting for him. And that's the trick. People sometimes go about it where they don't understand why they're doing certain things. They just know, well, this is what we're told to do. This is what we have to do, right? And in essence, it's one of the most important things because if you don't show vulnerability, if you don't show any kind of I'm in jeopardy of A, losing this match, or B, getting seriously hurt, what's the point to cheer? And again, now we're living in these crazy times where it's been 6 months or more where we haven't worked with a live audience. But that's the point of getting the live audience and getting them to come up and pop for you is, that babyface has everything stacked against him. There might be the heel manager outside or the tag team partner or the faction outside. and he's fighting all odds to just get back to his feet, put up his fists and say, come on, you know what I mean? I could do this. And that's what usually works. So, you know, I think it's one of the finer points. And I'll tell you a couple things. Sometimes in this business today, people are afraid to sell. A lot of the top guys in the business back in the day were afraid to sell. They felt it made you look weak. And that's something I never understood. And in the indies, you see it all the time where people are afraid to sell, to give their opponent the proper due of, you know, whatever, putting over their moves, etc. But without you putting over their moves and selling them properly and really showing them, you know, showing the audience, I should say, that this guy's a real threat, when you make your comeback and beat the guy or whatever, there's no purpose to it. If I was just to completely not register, not sell all your moves, like a, you know, and just come up and kill you, it wouldn't mean anything. Again, it's the way you tell the tale. And I think a lot of young kids today are afraid to do it. I know the young bucks are afraid to do it. And I said it last week as well. They're afraid of that silence sometimes in the match. You know, they're really afraid to, well, what happens when the action isn't constant? You know, when I'm not doing a dive every 2 minutes. You know, they get really uncomfortable with that, where you can really slow down the pacing of a match. And, you know, by like literally you could give some of the greats like Ricky Steamboat, you could give him a body slam and he would sell that thing, and not sell it in a hokey fashion. You body slam him, he would get up, grasp his lower back,
Yeah, put that hand on the back.
like and he'd get to his knees even. You know, the heel could walk around, gloat, you know, whatever, cuss out the audience, whatever. And, you know, and he would then grab his back and almost like massage his own back and like really, you know, put over the fact that hurt, man. Like or even like I lost my wind, you know, because that'll knock, if you take a bad bump for real, it'll knock the wind out of you. So there's so many ways you can get so much mileage out of something like that. And really you're cheating the story, and you're cheating yourself of when you go back to a higher pacing and you start making a comeback and you start putting on false finishes and back and forths, you really lose out on the drama. Because that's, if you watch any successful match where the crowd is really going, you know, going through the roof, it takes away from it if you know, if you're not, you know, because some of the best matches have been, well, you know, 30-40 minutes long, and the guys they can't even get to their feet anymore. They're on their knees punching each other because they can't even make it. You know what I mean? It's like that's selling, and that's like you're also not just selling moves, you're selling exhaustion. You're selling, you know, the mental anguish. It's like, you know, there's all like, if you hook a guy's leg, you think you have him, you hit him with your finish 1, 2, they kick out, you go, oh my God, like that's selling as well. There's all kinds of selling. You're selling as an expression. You're trying to convey to the audience what you're feeling, and that's really what it boils down to. You know.
What did you think of going back to Michael's? Did you see Raw? Did you see that? What
I did. Yeah, I saw.
What do you think when that happened? You thought, oh man, he kind of killed the punt there, or?
I don't know if he killed the punt. I don't know. I don't know if I don't think there's heat there, but a couple other people said something online. I don't know. I just know that he got up way too early, and I noticed, and maybe the referee got the call from somebody in the back, and Sean was kind of like up on the turnbuckle, kind of up, you know, not, he was still sitting down, but kind of, you know, cognizant in there to where then he kind of just melted back down again. So I think he just, either he didn't want to sell for it or didn't, I don't know. It was just very odd for somebody of his qualifications to do that. I mean, I know his head's not necessarily in the game the way it used to be, but somebody like Shawn Michaels should damn well know, you know, to stay down for something like that. I mean, he should have been KO'd.
Yeah.
Bottom line, you know.
Yep.
I mean, what does he worry about? You know, what is he worried about staying strong? But this goes again. Now this goes back to something, and this is what I forgot to say that I wanted to say. Back in the 80s and early 90s, even when I got into doing jobs in the old WWF, you didn't have to worry about selling. They'd make you sell. And it was kind of the point was
Mm-hmm.
we're in there with inexperienced guys. They would beat the crap out of you and make sure you sold. And then that was kind of a testing ground. If they saw that you knew how to sell, then they'd ease off of you. But at first, these guys, because they're wrestling worldwide, they don't know you. You're a local guy, probably being seen for the first time. These guys are on TV. This is their time to shine. They wanted to make sure I'm not going to put my career in your hands. I don't know you. They're going to make sure you sell. And then if they see that you know what you're doing, you know, they would back up and let you do your thing. But at first, man, these guys would beat the crap out of you. I mean, that's no joke. And I know that's not done today. That's very much frowned upon. But back then, man, you'd be nervous when you got in the ring. I remember I was in the ring with the head shrinkers, the old Samoan SWAT team. I got knocked out live, cold on Raw. And I was selling good for them. That was just how it was.
Yep.
It was very, very intimidating to get in the ring with those guys, all those kinds of guys.
Yeah, look like head shrinkers, Steiner brothers. You got you're getting killed out there. Yeah.
But then that's the one thing. I worked with the Steiners quite a few times, and the first time was a little rough. The second time was better, and then the third time they were asking me, "Well, what do you want to do? Call some stuff." So you kind of earn their respect, and then they also know to lighten up on you, because it's better if we work together. You can make my stuff look better than if I'm just going out there, and just potatoing you and blasting you. So it goes, both ways. But again, I think that just shows a sign of the times and a sign of a lot of, the experience level just isn't there like it was in the territory days, I should say,
Yep. So what do you think? Let's say you go back to Shawn Michaels, not the punt. Let's go back to SummerSlam 2005 when he's overselling Hulk Hogan like crazy. Is that hokey and horrible and terrible? I mean, it kind of ruined the match quite a bit if you think about it.
Well, I thought it was. I've heard that story. I heard he had heat with the whole situation. There was some kind of, I don't know what it was, but there was something there.
Well, he wanted to win the match, and Hogan's like, "No one came here to pay. No one came here and paid to see me lose, brother. I'm winning."
Okay,
so basically, he put the stamp down that he was winning, and then Michael's like, "Oh, I thought we were gonna have a best of 3. I win 1, you win 1, and maybe you win the third." Like they were gonna do something, and Hulk. Supposedly Hulk put the kibosh, and the whole thing was like, "No, they haven't paid me to see me lose to you," which is true, because me, my brother, and a bunch of our friends went down there, and if Hogan would have lost, we would have rioted, especially to Michaels, because we were not the biggest Michaels fans, but.
Right.
But that is somewhat true, though. I mean, I don't think the fans really, because the whole place was filled with Hulkamaniacs. I don't think we wanted to see him lose to Shawn Michaels, of all people.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing is, even Shawn, being as hokey as he was, and I've watched that match several times for that reason, he's still so good that it didn't even kill the match.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I mean? He was so good. And I almost, in pro wrestling, it's weird for me because there's 2 ways you can go about it. You could be a realistic seller where you try to make it look like it's a shoot, like it's real. But then you got guys like, that do the Ric Flairs and the Ray Stevens and the Pat Pattersons and the Bobby Heenans. Remember Bobby?
Mm-hmm.
He threw him and he threw him to the turnbuckle. He would do all kinds of crazy flips and stuff. And that's overselling. But in a way, it's almost, that's almost what the fun part of what wrestling is. It didn't bother me so much then when Shawn did it, although some things were a bit ridiculous. I mean, I've seen times, they have this thing on Twitter. It's called like oversell whatever, and where you, one day they hashtag it where like they have all these big oversell moves. And like, just taking, the Stone Cold Stunner and doing a bunch of flips and, then doing the Flair face bump at the end. I mean, I don't know, man. To me, that's on the less serious side of doing business. But still, I think there's a place for all of it, depending on who you are and depending on what your character is and the situation of the match too. So there's all kinds of. It's almost like the way I see it is you got to feel the room and feel the situation and go about it how you would. But you don't see too much of that these days anymore. I think wrestlers today, men and women, are more interested in like almost like a strong style Japan kind of thing. Like the more serious wrestlers you see are are into that kind of stuff less than they are of the American style these days, even in AEW, especially in AEW, but even so in NXT and even WWE, the main roster. So, you know,
I feel like Michaels too. I mean, he's so good. You're right. He didn't ruin the match, but he's just so
no,
smooth and so good. The only thing I didn't like was the leg drop part, because then he like flipped 3 times and then flipped over and ended
yeah,
up in the right spot. Like that was the only one. I'm like, I mean, there were some other points in the match where like, come on, but you could tell he was a little frustrated with the Hulkster. He wanted that win, I guess, in that match.
yeah, and that's where shit does often get spoiled, is like fans don't see that part, but
Politics.
when politics, and also they don't like the outcome. That's where, and we should talk about this at some point, like shooting with guys.
Hmm.
Some guys would shoot with you, and like,
Yeah. Oh
okay,
yeah.
you think you're going over, take it from me. That's why there were, in those days, you were very much you should know some moves to protect yourself, because guys, it never happened to me, thank God, but guys would definitely try stuff on you if they were not happy. I'll tell you one story, and again, this is way off topic, but I don't want to forget it. um, is one night, me and Sean Waltman, X Factor, we were going over on APA, Bradshaw and
Yep.
Farouk, and they weren't very happy with it. Well, they let us know. They
Hmm.
let us know. They beat the crap out of us. They bloodied Sean's mouth. Ron Simmons dropped me on my head, almost broke my neck. And it was very much noticeable. Actually, Undertaker pulled us to the side, asking us, "Is everything all right out there?" Like, it looked a little. I'm like, "No, I know, sold it." But so it goes with the selling and with all that stuff. It goes both ways, because
So
sometimes
what
guys
did
aren't
they
willing.
say? What did they say backstage to you though? What did Bradshaw and Ron Simmons say
I was
backstage?
like, I was cool with those guys. So I was like, especially Ron. So I'm like, Ron, was everything cool out there? He's like, oh man, everything's fine. I knew everything wasn't fine. I guess
Yeah.
they didn't take too kindly to two 200-pound guys beating, two 300-plus-pound guys.
Yep. Yep.
And it was live SmackDown at the time too. So I guess they just weren't happy.
So
But
Did
you know,
Undertaker say anything to them? Like to,
no, because I
no?
think Taker was friends with them, so he was just looking to see where my head was at, if I was going to quote unquote sell it and kind of whine about it. But I totally no sold it and said no, everything's fine, even though I was barely standing. you know,
Yeah, two of the toughest guys beating the hell out of you. What did
yeah.
Sean Waltman say about it? Was he pissed?
He wasn't pissed. Like, we all, it's kind of like those, when those things happen, especially with guys of that level. Even though Waltman is very highly regarded,
Yep.
you just kind of know to not put it over. We kind of did. It's like, don't ask, don't tell, don't talk about it. It's
Yep.
weird, man. It's like this weird little thing in wrestling. It's like no other thing in the world where if that happened to someone else, I would imagine they would be pissed. But
Yep.
sometimes it's better just to keep your mouth shut.
And that's interesting. Like, you guys are not selling it. Then you see guys like Bret Hart, where you're like, holy shit, was that real? You remember WrestleMania 8 when he bends over, Piper gives him the uppercut to the face, and all of a sudden he's bleeding? So apparently,
I don't remember
oh,
that.
go back.
Oh wow.
This match is awesome, and I just learned this from Bret. Piper laid out the match. I'm shocked, because usually Bret,
Yeah.
from what I heard, usually laid out the match, but he said this
Right.
was
Right.
Piper's match. One of my favorite matches, probably the best match on the card. I know Savage Flair is great too, but that might be the best. There's a spot where Piper literally gives Bret an uppercut. It looks real, and he's bleeding. So
Wow.
apparently they weren't allowed to blade. So Bret said, I guess, to Piper, like, when we do this, I can blade it, but I'll make it look like you really got me. So I always thought, like, oh my god, what a friggin' sell! And supposedly Vince in the back thought it was legit. He's like, he really,
Oh wow.
he really got you. So is that one of those things? Sometimes when you go to the back, the guy is working everyone else. You're like Bret
Yeah.
and Piper
Yeah.
almost like working you. So when you get back to,
Yeah.
like, you okay? And
That's
they
Yep.
sell it too in the back.
Yeah.
You
That's happened. I remember, and you guys, fans, could go back and watch this. The first time I wrestle, or the first time Kurt Angle came in to do the fake ECW, I was his
Mhm.
opponent, and we start where we're nose to nose, kind of talking shit to each other, and he headbutt me, and it looked like he headbutt me in the nose. And the way I sold it was, I went down to one knee, and I didn't do the hokey oversell. I
Mhm.
completely put myself in the moment where I'm losing consciousness, or as like almost like an actor, like, where do I go here? How do I do this? and I totally put it in a zone where it looked like this was real. It wasn't a wrestling sell. It wasn't like it was like, very subtle. I went down to one knee. I did the wobbly legs. And when I came back, the agents were like, "Are you okay, Justin? Do you need help?" And I'm like, "Oh man, he got me on that."
Yeah.
So he kind of, you know what I
That's
mean?
awesome. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there are times where that's in play as well. Definitely.
Did Kurt say anything to you like that was a stiff shot or anything like that, or he was
It
just
wasn't stiff. It wasn't stiff. It wasn't stiff. It just looked, because he did make contact, but we both have hard foreheads,
so just
it didn't.
just a good job all the way around. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he really hit me with the headbutt, but he didn't hit me in a way where it would hurt me, and you know what I mean. It just was, safe at that point, and nobody got hurt. So
I love that. So you're almost tricking the boys a little bit, like, oh man, fucking angle, like holy
dude. There would be times I would sell so much, sometimes out of fear of getting beat up. When I was younger, I would oversell to where the boys would come back and be like, "Are you okay, brother?" I would really ham it up, because then if you're selling to the point where it's believable, even to the guy that's doing it to you, then you could really amp it up. There were a couple times, like when I worked with Vader in WCW as a jobber, I worked with him and I oversold everything for him. Like I was dying in there, and he got nervous, that he really hurt me. And again, I was just doing that, hoping that he would lay off me a little bit, and he did. So sometimes, man, it's such an intricate little game that you got to play. But again, that's how important, back to topic, that selling really is in all aspects of the business. I mean, this is at its finest. I mean, if I've heard of boxing matches being thrown and this and that. I mean, it goes down to, that's what wrestling was at its core. It was supposed to be a real thing that we were, or it was supposed to be real, and we had to make it look real until it got exposed. Whenever that was, in the early 70s or whatever, it really got exposed. But we were supposed to make it like, this is real. And that's something where I think more guys and gals should focus on selling than they should focus on their moves. That's how important it is. Because if you could sell, then man, that's half, if not more, of the fight. Then the other stuff is gravy.
And now you mentioned before kind of some of the overselling, and we were kind of talking about stuff. And I always think about the Stone Cold Stunner and the guys that took it the best. But I liked the overselling. So sometimes it's good. Like, you're right. Yeah. It's the fun part of wrestling. So Scott Hall took a great stunner. The Rock took an awesome stunner. Shane McMahon maybe took the best one. I mean, he would fly back and kind of do it. I remember a few times, The Rock took the stunner, came back up and was like groggy, and then got the, got stunner again. Yeah. So is that like, the guys in the back, do you guys love the overselling? Not love it? Depends on who the guy is in the situation. You do? Okay.
We pop for it. Yeah, huge. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. And another thing, I was watching today on my Twitter feed, somebody showed a clip of Tommy Dreamer pile driving Van Damme.
Oh, yeah.
And he literally, I see how, I looked at it for a long time, like, how does he do it? And the ring was so springy, he had to get the timing exactly right. But when the ring is going up from, you go down, then it bounces back up, he would kind of nip up. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, use his shoulders to propel himself.
Yep.
Oh, well done. But stuff like that is super cool. That's the fun part of wrestling to me. I think it's really cool.
I was just wondering that too, because literally he springs off. It almost looks like his head, but I guess it's not his head. I guess it's his shoulders, and he literally goes flying up in the air. And the crowd goes nuts. I mean, I think
it looks devastating. It took me 4 or 5 times to look at it to see how he did it. So it's very,
and that's
very
an expert eye looking at it too. So that's really good by RVD.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was a one of a kind. He was definitely one of a kind at that.
So who's like some of your favorite sellers of all time? Because I'm just going to say, like, Hogan to me was one of the best, and people might not even realize or appreciate it.
No,
he was literally
a good seller.
Like, he would sell death, and then obviously make the comeback, but it would make his win look better that he almost died, and then whatever. So love Hogan. Love Brett. Shawn Michaels, obviously great.
Yep.
The Rock was good. But I always loved Brett. He always struck me as the most believable. Like, holy shit, he's really hurt, or he really injured his knee, or he's really frustrated. To me,
Right.
I always thought Brett was one of the best. Who are some of your favorite sellers?
All those guys I would say as well. For me, Ricky Morton.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Ricky Morton made it. I mean, he was undersized. He was always fighting from underneath, and man, it looked like he was dying in there. You know, it really did. Ricky Morton was definitely top five. Ricky Steamboat. I mean,
Steamboat, yep.
for me, very few guys do it like Steamboat. He was probably of anybody, and you could probably ask around. Steamboat was the guy. And then I would say Sean, definitely.
Yep.
Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens as well, going back some years, but those guys definitely were great. Bobby Heenan,
Yes.
again,
Yep.
was tremendous. So, because a lot of people don't know, they just remember Bobby from being a manager, but Bobby was a very successful pro wrestler in the early to mid 70s, late 70s, before he came to WWF over out in California. So, if you ever watch any of Bobby Heenan's old stuff, man, whew, he was amazing. He was really good. So those guys,
Yep. Mr. Perfect is another great one.
Oh,
Rick Rude,
forget about
shockingly,
it.
would be another great
Yeah.
seller. Yep.
Kurt Hennig.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Wow, blasphemy. I forgot to say Kurt Hennig. Kurt
Yeah.
was one of the greats. I used to mimic a lot of his stuff. The knee where he'd take, somebody would give him the knee lift. He'd take a flip. He would also, when he was selling his leg, he would go and grab the top ring rope, and they would sweep his leg, and he'd do the 360,
Yep.
and stuff like that. Yeah, Kurt Hennig was one of the greats. One of the things I used to do, and I got this from Kurt, or I don't know if it was Kurt or Sean, but I would shoot the guy in, go for a stinger splash. The guy would move, so I would be like that on the turnbuckle. They'd give you the punt. I would fly, land on my nuts, and then they'd shake the ropes. I'd come back, and then feed to some other stuff, So that was Kurt and Sean. I don't know who did it first, but they were both into that kind of stuff, which again originated in the San Francisco territories with Ray Stevens and Pat. So it all kind of has somewhere placement in time, so to speak.
Yeah, and I was going to throw you out there, one of the best sellers. I feel like you're right. You did a little bit of Michaels, a little bit of Perfect. You had a little bit of your own stuff in there. I mean, is that what you do? Like almost as wrestlers, like, I just take bits from each guy. Like, okay, this guy sells this perfectly. I like the way he sells this, and like, I like the way this guy sells that. Is that kind of what you do?
That's what I've always done. I just took bits and pieces of guys I loved and just kind of did what they did. I wouldn't compare myself to them, but I definitely. I wasn't as good as them is what I'm trying to say. But I would say like the Flairs, the Shawns, the Hennings, stuff like that. I definitely stole from. Absolutely.
Now, we're talking about selling, but each week we do like to kind of talk about the past. The first week we talked about Calgary and kind of coming up, Lance Storm and the Hearts and the Heart Dungeon. Then last week we focused on Pat Patterson and kind of that mentorship and that. I'd like to just ask you this week about Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, and where that relationship started, because you guys have been friends for a very, very long time, but he was like a mentor and you were like his protege, right? And as far as that relationship is concerned?
Yeah, absolutely. It basically just started, from me not being able to rent a car, driving to the towns with the agents, and he basically said, you're going to get more heat with the boys for driving with the agents, before you even get started. So come with me. And that's how it was. He liked being around younger talent, and he liked to mentor guys. He did it with X-Pac, 1-2-3 Kid. And then, then he grabbed me under his wing, and he really taught me a lot about a lot of things in the wrestling business, and also taught me some not so great things about the wrestling business. But it is what it is. But it was very positive though, because at some point, when you're that young in the game and you're getting knowledge from guys that are main eventing, it really, you know what I mean? You're seeing it because back, it was a different era. It coming from 92 to 93, 94, 95. I would say like during the end of the Hulk Warrior era, guys would never share any secrets. If they knew something, if they wouldn't share it with another one of the boys, because they were thinking, well, I'll keep this to myself. Why help someone else take my job? And then it started to not be that way, where we wanted to help each other and to help groom one another. And And that's where, Scott first started doing it, and other guys like Shawn Michaels took under, and Shawn also took Diesel under his wing and stuff like that. So that's where you started to see the top guys kind of helping out younger guys coming up, and it's a positive change because that makes years of difference when you're getting that kind of firsthand knowledge of what works and what doesn't work. Instead of you going out there and screwing the pooch and screwing up, then you know what I mean, and getting it right. Instead of taking months to get it right. So it was really big help. But yeah, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, man, he helped me in a lot of ways, psychology wise, how to prepare matches, what it all meant, timing, and also to make it just to make it snug. Don't let there be a lot of holes in your game. There's nothing that looks worse than when you really make it look fake. So he didn't believe in going out there and killing one another, but we're in the fight game, right? Make it look as good as you can, and if you got to lay it in there, make it safe. And Scott taught me a lot.
You think that sometimes he gets a bad rap and a bad reputation just from having his demons and stuff? Do you think that kind of overshadows sometimes his mentorship and his great leadership ability? That can sometimes be the case.
It does. A lot of it. I've had my ins and outs with Scott. He's his own worst enemy. Scott Hall's his own worst enemy, and it's a shame because I think a lot of people would say that he is one of the best. One of the best was one of the best in the game. Unfortunately, he's got a lot of issues, not just with drugs and alcohol, like people would assume. I think he's just got mental health issues, and he's just gone through a lot in his personal life that a lot of people don't know about, and nor am I here to say. I mean, it's just speculation, but I just think he's had a rough life, and I think, unfortunately, the way he treats people at times could be very off-putting, and it takes away from his greatness because at his prime, he was one of the greatest.
Yep. Yep. I think people don't realize, I know they covered it in his documentary that WWE did end on E60 by accident. When he was a bouncer back in the day, he actually murdered somebody. So I'm sure
Right.
that is kind of replaying in his mind. It's not something that you just go, that happened, I'm going to forget about it. That's something you relive over and over. So, I mean, people can probably ease up on him on some cases.
Well, that's what I meant
instances.
by that. Yeah. That's what I meant by it without saying it. But yeah, absolutely. So, it is what it is, man. It is what it is.
Now, was he ever one of those guys, and not to you or anything, but was he ever like a bully or anything like to the back? I mean, he was like, you always hear stories, and when I was talking to him, he was telling me a bunch of funny stories. I don't really call them bullying stories, but was he a guy that would kind of throw his weight around? I'm Razor Ramon, I'm the stalwart here. Would he do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, he would definitely do that, to a lot of people, not just younger guys or smaller guys, to everybody, or to people he thought he could, which, at times I was part of it. I laughed along with them, but as I got older, I was like, just not for me, and even recently, well, the past couple of years, I've lost touch with Scott because he said something to me on Twitter publicly that was not for public consumption, and I got really offended at him, and I'm like, dude, I'm done with you. I don't need this anymore. He's more harmful to himself and to others. And I just, I kind of pieced out on that relationship, and it's too bad, but I haven't spoken to him since,
Yeah, I think he's on Twitter.
Is he?
I think so. Yeah, I haven't seen him on Twitter.
Well, that's
I'm sorry. You were saying
no.
I
saw him a year ago, and he came over to talk to me, and I just turned my back and walked away. It's kind of like, and a lot of people unfortunately feel that way about him too. As much as you want to love him, can't help Scott from himself. And I don't think you ever can. And it's really sad.
Definitely sad. Now, we're talking about a little bit of your, history, a little bit of the past, but the present. Just want to touch on this a little bit because you mentioned to me before off air pacing of the match, Dynamite this week. What was kind of an issue you had with some of the pacings of the matches? Because to me, it always seems like the matches are too long. They're trying to get too much shit in. It's just, I don't know. It's just boom, 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 boom. Oh, okay. Yeah. 18 minutes later, it's over. It's like, where the hell is the selling and the registering and everything else?
Well,
and the pace.
And this is, I didn't get this from watching Dynamite. I realized it by watching Pat McAfee versus Adam Cole because of Pat McAfee's lack of experience. They had to dial it back, the pacing. pacing meaning how quick you're moving, how fast you are going from A to B to C. And because of his lack of experience, they really had to make it a very basic match, but it doesn't necessarily mean basic is bad, right? And going back and watching AEW and then watching that afterwards, I was like, wow, I actually had more enjoyment watching the McAfee match than some of the AEW stuff, because in AEW, Jim Ross almost doesn't have the opportunity to explain what's going on. See, announcers are there. There's one thing, we'll go back to Razor real quick, but this is relevant. Scott would always tell me, grab a hold in your squash matches, because this way the announcer, the commentators will be like, able to talk about you. Scott would purposely like do something and grab an arm bar and look at the camera, or facing hard cam. And then, Jim Ross and Vince McMahon will be like, oh, Razor Ramon, he looks great. Look at that, 280 pounds of this and that.
Yep.
You're giving an opportunity to sell him, right? To put him over. And when you're doing ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, it's too quick. You're not getting an opportunity to be put over. You know what I mean? It's just you're calling matches instead of being the focal point of, you know what I mean? This way they're talking about you. And during the McAfee match, I noticed that it was slower, but it really benefited what they were trying to do instead of spot after spot. And again, I'm not saying those spots aren't cool. It really loses. When you see anything all the time, you lose your appreciation for it. And in the McAfee match, they ended with that Canadian Destroyer move, which I've never taken, but I was shocked to see him take it. And that was like, whoa, because everything else in the match was so basic, right? And when you're watching AEW at times, you'll see all these crazy innovative moves, and then they'll win with a small package. So it's kind of anticlimactic. So yeah, that's just pretty much, it's all relevant in that. And sometimes it's better to, pacing wise, dial it back and give everything you're doing a moment to breathe. And you know what I mean? Sometimes it's okay to not be doing something. You don't always have to do something. The best way I could explain it. So.
And like you said, the pacing of the match could also be the selling of exhaustion, mental exhaustion,
moves. Right? Exactly.
Frustration. Right? There's many different points of it.
There's times in the match, like you're blown up, like I'm blown sky high, and it's like, all right, time to go, time to go. It's like, why are we, unless you're on television time or something like that where you need to go, but why aren't you selling your exhaustion? Why aren't you, again, use all of it? I think, performers today are more worried about how much cool stuff can I do than telling a story, And, if you were really taking those moves in a 30-minute match, you'd be in a lot of trouble, and you would not be jumping around, hop skipping. And you know what I mean? You would be breathing heavy. You would be sore. You would be hurt. You would be, where am I? You watch when a UFC fight's done. Everybody's banged up pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
You can't do 25 minutes and walk around like, nothing happened. You're discrediting your moves that you've been selling, this entire time. So.
Yeah, like if you, for instance, Ryan Bader, the last Bellator, got knocked out. You think he's running around the ring like whatever?
Right.
I mean, he was loopy. He was for real got knocked out. So I mean, he was out of it. Even when he stood up, he was out on his feet. Somebody had to help him so he didn't fall over.
Help him out. Yeah.
So yep.
Absolutely.
So selling is very important. I think that's a great stopping point, and I'll just want to mention some plugs. So. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. You are on Twitter and Instagram at PJ Polacco. Of course, you can check out my website, tmptempire.com. You can, of course, check out russosbrand.com and check out the Vince Russo on Twitter. And obviously check out the Russo brand on Twitter as well. And on YouTube, we are at Vince Russo, and you can type that in or type in Vince Russo's Pyro and Ballyhoo on YouTube. But what else you got going on?
All I got is prowrestlingtees.com/Justin Credible. And that is all for now.
Nice. You got any appearances or anything coming up?
Well,
next week or so?
Well, this will be put out next week. I do not. This will be put out way after, but today in less than an hour, I have to do a virtual meet and greet.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I'll be doing that with
those.
with somebody from. I was supposed to be in Jersey today, as I had told you last week when I bothered you. But the gentleman was so kind to ship me the stuff, and to just do it like, I guess we're going to Zoom conference it or something.
Yep.
So he sent me some sticks and stuff. But again, this will be, you guys will be hearing this. It'll be a week old. So anyways, but that's
It's
what I
just
have
cool.
to
The
do.
virtual signing is just a cool thing. I love that
It
too
is, yeah.
because I think Russo just did one. He didn't leave his house. He just
Yeah.
you did. I think you were on right before him. You
Yeah,
guys,
I forget.
basically, and they bring you in. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But I still like meeting the fans. I love meeting the
Yes.
fans, and hopefully we can get back to that real soon.
All right, this has been another awesome episode.
Yes, sir.
I'll let you, throw us out the only way you know how. Just incredible.
Well, guys, Pro Wrestling 101 for this week. We talked about selling and registering. Pro Wrestling 101, not just the coolest. Pro Wrestling 101, not just the best. John and I from the 2-Man Power Trip, we are just incredible. See you all next week.